O tēnā koutou katoa. Today it has been my pleasure to host Prime Minister Marin of Finland. This is a historic occasion as it is the first visit of a Finnish Prime Minister to Aotearoa, New Zealand. Prime Minister Marin is accompanied by the Minister for Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade and a senior delegation of Finnish business representatives. My talks with the Prime Minister today have affirmed the warm relationship between New Zealand and Finland. Our countries are aligned on incredibly important issues. We share a strong commitment to democratic values as the basis for open, tolerant, resilient, equal societies, and to multilateralism and a rules-based international order that has underpinned global peace and prosperity since 1945. The Prime Minister and I agreed that while our relationship as nations is warm, there is scope for us to deepen bilateral ties, and we discussed how we could do so across a range of issues. Some of these are already outlined in the joint statement that we've agreed today. Our discussions today are timely, at a time when the international rules-based system that countries like New Zealand and Finland rely on for our prosperity and security is under pressure across the globe. It is more important than ever for us to work together to support international rules and the values that underpin them. Prime Minister Marin and I discussed the global set of challenges that we faced together. President Vladimir Putin and Russia's illegal and unjustified invasion of Ukraine is perhaps the most acute of these. Both of our countries have been unequivocal in condemning Putin's illegal war on Ukraine. We discussed our strong commitment to supporting Ukraine as the war continues. The conflict, though, I'm very aware, is literally on Finland's doorstep, and I appreciated the Prime Minister's insightful perspectives on the war and, of course, the enduring impact it may have on Europe and global security. I was able to outline our response to Russia's illegal invasion and some of the measures we've taken to support Ukraine and seek the Prime Minister's perspective on the trajectory of the conflict. Putin's war is being fought much closer to Finland, but is still a very real threat to the security and prosperity of New Zealand and our region too. The Prime Minister and I also discussed the gravely concerning situation facing women and girls, particularly in Iran. The violence being used against peaceful protesters there, as well as the death penalty sentences being issued to protesters, is abhorrent. We both co-sponsored the UN Human Rights Council resolution last week and established a fact-finding mission to Iran that will be thoroughly and independently investigate the alleged human rights violations there. As a current Human Rights Council member, Finland's vote for that resolution was a valuable part of the large margin of the resolution passing, and New Zealand is incredibly grateful for that. My hope is that we will continue to work together on this and many other issues. Prime Minister Marin, you are most welcome to Aotearoa, New Zealand. We're privileged to have you, and it's my pleasure to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Jacinda. I'm very pleased to visit Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern today. Thank you for the very warm and friendly reception to Auckland and New Zealand. It was a privilege to be greeted by the ceremony of welcome, the Pofiri. We are much impressed how the role and rights of Indigenous people are respected and celebrated here. This is the first time ever visit of Finland's Prime Minister to New Zealand. Finland and New Zealand count among the oldest democracies in the world. Our countries were among the first ones to grant full political rights to the women. In Finland, women could stand as candidates and vote in general elections in 1906, just before Finland gained its independence. It is not a coincidence that our countries are today one of the most advanced economies and equal societies in the world. Our societies are built on trust. Our citizens can rely on high-quality services, education, and social security. This is also how we can lead economic growth and have ambitions in addressing climate change in just manner. We also face similar challenges as economies, such as aging populations. This offers opportunities for cooperation as well. We need to imagine the well-being economy of tomorrow, which its services and also use of new technologies. Finland has strong know-how in this area. Finland's Minister of trade, Ville Skinnari, and some of our leading companies have joined me to New Zealand, like Jacinda previously said. As our common values, democracy and human rights, are pushed back, we must work together and reach out to our partners. You have a unique view on the Indo-Pacific region, and we want to understand it even better. Among the lessons learned from COVID pandemic, it is that we need trusted value chain in critical areas such as medicines and medical equipments. A similar lesson is being drawn from the effects of Russia's war against Ukraine for our energy sources, global food security, and our economies. As our societies becomes even more digitalized, also dependencies in new technologies becomes risks. The new free trade agreement between European Union and New Zealand opens new opportunities also for our cooperation. And finally, the most importantly, we need to continue our efforts in support of Ukraine. Russia's illegal and brutal war against Ukraine has to end on terms set by Ukraine. I hope my visit will bring our already excellent relations to the next level.
Thank you. Katie Bradford from Television New Zealand. You've both talked about, I guess, common interests and women here. As young women leaders, have you talked about how you can support each other, mentor each other, and I guess be role models for other women around the world? And that's a question for both of you, if you can both answer.
A great question. Actually, where the focus of our conversation is what more we could do together in support of other women in other countries who are facing dire circumstances where we see the most basic of human rights being repressed and violated. And so I think that shows a sense of responsibility that we feel, given there are so few female leaders, to make sure that we use our voice on behalf of those that are experiencing such dire circumstances, and Iran is a good example of that. We will have the opportunity to meet again this evening, and so I imagine at that point it might be a chance for us to speak a little less formally about our experiences in politics. Prime Minister.
I totally agree with Jacinda, what she just said. I also worry about the situation in Iran right now, the human rights situation, the situation with women and girls, the brave women that are protesting against the laws and the security situation of women in Iran. We need to address these kind of issues together, and we will have this discussion in upcoming European Council in December. Iran is also sending drones to Ukraine. They are using Iranian drones in Ukraine to kill people there. So I think Iran is one discussion topic that we will continue today, and also continue the discussion in European Union. I think we must stand together for equality and human rights, and make sure that every woman and girls all across the world will have the same rights, the same opportunities as men do, and we have to make sure that this will become reality for everyone, not only the citizens of New Zealand or Finland or many democratic countries, but also all the other countries in the world.
Hello, Isabel Ewing from Newshub. A question for both of you, but if I could start with Prime Minister Marin. Do younger women leaders still have to work harder to avoid criticism of their personal lives? Or in 2022, are people ready to see, a real human side to their leaders?
Well, I don't think that there is a reality in that kind of world. Well, politicians wouldn't face criticism, and that's a good thing. It's very good that we have free media, that we have the critical side on politicians. But of course, I also want to show an example that different kind of people can be politicians and can be in powerful places. I think there should be room for different people from different backgrounds, different genders, different generations, and we need everyone on board to making the decisions, and that's the only way that we can ensure also that the decisions are good ones, that all the aspects and angles are taking account on. So I think it's very important that we can also show the younger generations that you can be yourself and still engage in politics, still make a difference, that there is a room for you in these systems.
I agree.
Prime Minister Marin, Glenn McConnell from stuff.co.nz. You mentioned before that you made a special request to come to New Zealand. Why did you make that request? And given, trade is not major, what was your motivation for coming here?
Other than being a beautiful country.
Well, of course, one of the reasons was that Finnish prime ministers never visited New Zealand, Australia, so this is the first visit, and I think we have a lot of things in common. We are both welfare states, even though we are very far away from each other. I think the mentality of people are similar. I think we have a lot of things that we are discussing right now that are very important. So I see a lot of possibilities between New Zealand and Finland. Our populations are the similar size. I think there are many things that we share, even though we are so far away and even though the weather is very different here than in Finland. And I think also that we need to make sure that the democratic countries are working together even more closely because of the geopolitical situation and the change in geopolitics. So I think we have to make sure that we have the trading routes, that we have cooperation also in the international fora, that we need in the future even more so, because we are also seeing the pushback of human rights. We are seeing authoritarian countries having their own ideologies in place, and the situation is getting more severe. So we need democratic countries and the cooperation between democratic countries. And I think that the Nordic countries together, Australia, New Zealand, we could tighten our cooperation so much more.
Prime Minister Marin, Stuart Somerland from The Spin-Off. Even in New Zealand media, I've seen that title of Party Prime Minister crop up. As far away, you've come all this way to New Zealand, it seems to have followed you this far. Do you think that's unfair, or at this point, do you kind of own it?
Well, I don't focus on it. I focus on other issues. During our governmental period, there has been the global pandemic. There's war now in Europe. There's energy crisis, perhaps economic crisis in front of us. So there are many things on my plate that are concerning many different issues than my free time that are very spare. So I had a couple of free days during the summer. And if the media wants to focus on it, I don't have anything to say. You are free to discuss and write what you want, but I'm focusing on the issues that are in our program.
I think the spin-off readers probably would be focused on the issues as well.
Prime Minister Ardern, Joey Dwyer from News Talk ZB here. A lot of people will be wondering, are you two meeting just because, you're similar in age and, got a lot of, common stuff there, when you got into politics and stuff, or can Kiwis actually expect to see more deals between our two countries down the line? Because
my first question is, I wonder whether or not anyone ever asked Barack Obama and John Key if they met because they were of similar age. We, of course, have a higher proportion of men in politics. It's reality. Because two women meet, it's not simply because of their gender. Finland exports into New Zealand $199 million worth of exports. They have particular technology in companies like Nokia, biofuels, even basic industrial wares that we use in our buildings. You won't be aware that a large number of our elevators come out of Finland. Agricultural machinery. New Zealand, on the other hand, is trading about $14 million worth, and it's mostly in wine and beef. There is huge potential between us. The EU FTA is a launch pad for that. But we need to make sure that as nations, we don't just simply go through the motions of an FTA ratification, but that as individual nations, we look for the opportunities to build on that economic agreement. So for me, this is timely. Next year, we're looking to progress that FTA. Our meeting today is a chance, alongside the Prime Minister's high-level trade delegation of significant industry leaders, we really leverage the economic opportunities between our two countries. Little would be known about the depth of that relationship or the potential of it, but it's our job to further it, regardless of our gender.
Yeah, we are meeting because we are prime ministers, of course, but as Jacinda said, we have a business delegation with us. We have a lot of things in common, but also a lot of things where we can do much more together. One of those things are technologies. I really worry about the dependencies that we have right now on authoritarian countries when it comes to new technologies, the digital infrastructure in our societies, and also the natural resources that we are dependent on. We have to make sure that we are not building the same traps when it comes to new technologies and digital solutions that we have right now in Europe when it comes to energy from Russia. So we have to make sure that we have the value chains, that we have the cooperation between democratic countries, especially when it comes to knowledge, know-how, new technologies. And I think this is one of the main issues that we will continue discussing later today at dinner.
Journalism, solidarity in action there. Can I ask a question about, you sit down with world leaders, both as smaller countries you have considerable amount of soft power. How can we use that when we're talking about Ukraine and Iran, big problems in the world, how do we use that soft power to make a difference?
It's a good question. I think countries of our size, our what might be perceived as relative geographic isolation face these questions. But I think if I were to reflect on just one example, for New Zealand we have been long-time advocates of nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear prohibition. Now some might question what level of sway and impact can we have from our perspective. Well, actually we have made progress on, for instance, the Test Ban Treaty. It has taken 25 years, but our continual advocacy and diplomacy, our principled position has made a difference. Now it's about taking that to the next stage. I think it's important that regardless of size, because of course we are still a vote within the UN, we still have a voice on things like the Human Rights Council. We still have a voice when it comes to Iran's membership on the Committee on the Status of Women, that regardless of size, we use it in a principled fashion, and we continue to be strong advocates. Just my view.
Well, I think we need hard power when it comes to Ukraine. They need weapons, they need financial support, they need humanitarian support, and we need to also make sure that all the refugees fleeing from Ukraine are welcomed to Europe, and millions has come already. The war in Ukraine feels very concrete from Finland's perspective, because we share a long border with Russia, 1,300 kilometers of border with Russia. We have been in war with Russia, so the situation is very concrete to the Finnish people, and they need right now our support, and we have to make sure that they will win. So they need more weapons. We have made, for example, 10 packages of weaponry to Ukraine, and we also need to make sure that the sanctions are harder and harder against Russia, because the war is affecting all of us, mostly Ukrainians, the civilians that are dying every day. They are bombing now the infrastructure in Ukraine, the electrical network, also the water network. So people are suffering every day in Ukraine. But it also affects all over the world, in Europe with energy prices, with high inflation, also in New Zealand, also in this region with high energy prices. So we need to make sure that the war stops soon as possible, and Ukraine will win, and they will need our help. They will need hard power to win that war.
Thank you.
Thank you.